Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. It is brief, in its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
A flaming chalice reminds us of the use of reason to light our way in the darkness and has been a Unitarian symbol for over 450 plus years. We light this chalice today to affirm our respect for the teachings and traditions of our faith.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All of you here and online are welcome, and all with all that is your life. I'm Carol Knox, your worship leader for today, and this is our beloved Reverend David Maynard, our speaker for today. He has been East Rose's minister emeritus since 2013, and before that, he served our congregation very well, I might add, for 10 years, and before that, he served UU congregations in West Seattle, Nashville, and Peoria, Illinois. Let us all take a moment now to greet each other. So first stand and turn and look at the camera and wave at the people online on the magical online land. I call it magical because I don't understand it. And then you listen for a minute. Let's please take a moment to offer respect and appreciation to the indigenous people whose traditional homelands and hunting grounds are here where we gather each Sunday. In remembering these communities, we honor the legacy, their lives, and their descendants.
I have some opening words, but first I'd like to say what a pleasure it is to be back here and how strange it is to be back here. Even though I sneak in and out of the church at odd hours to change locks or to help with other minor things. In fact, and I came to service a few weeks ago, that was great too, but it's always a novelty to come back, and yet it's a novelty to embrace our traditions in the presence of this congregation. So I'm just glad to be here. Opening words are from our many homes and bringing diverse concerns, some joyous and some sad. We gather together to worship this morning, for this is one way we care for one another. And our opening hymn is number 128 in the gray hymn book, or well, the words will be up there too. And we'll sing all 4 verses, I think, right?
Yes.
So,
Standing?
stand. Go ahead.
Okay.
like to tell a story that's about a piece of our Unitarian history. And do you know where I don't know your name. What's your name? Is he showing? What's his name? Joey?
Jonah.
Jonah. Hi, Jonah. I'm David. There was a country, there still is a part of a country in Europe, in Romania now, called Transylvania. And there was a king in that country whose name was John, which isn't quite Jonah, but it's similar. And he was a young king. He actually became a king when he was about 3 months old, when the regular king died. But, the previous king died. But in fact, he was raised and educated and had a chance to experience a lot of life and good teaching as he went along. And I'd like to tell a little story about religious freedom, because that's a big part of our history in this congregation. The king had many important decisions to make, and he had to decide who could come into the city and do business there. And the king made decisions about what things were grown for people to eat outside the city walls. And the king made laws to protect people in the city and help them be happy. And it was an exciting time. The king was kind of feeling things were going pretty well. There were also many churches, and this is a church here, and different religions in the king's country. And they shared many ideas about God and about religion, but they also disagreed about how God spoke to people and how God cared for them. And that was a part of the religious tradition, and how people could best show God that they loved God. Sometimes people even fought about these differences. And I don't know if you know this, but they still fight today over the same kinds of things. This is 450 years ago, and it hasn't changed. Sometimes people from one church would even kill or hurt people from another church. And they wanted the king to decide which religion was the right religion and which church was the right church. And the king knew that the fighting couldn't go on because people weren't happy when they're fighting. I don't think anybody's happy when they're fighting, as a matter of fact. Then they pretend they are. And so he decided to invite the leaders, the ministers, and I'm a minister, from some of the main churches to come help him decide. And the king asked the first minister how he would have the cities throughout the kingdom look. And the minister from that church said, "Oh, it would look like this. My church would be in your cities, O king." The minister said, "My church has the best ideas." The king thought about what the first minister said. And then the king asked the second minister from a different church what he would have the cities in the kingdom look like. The minister from the second church said he would have them, "My church would be in your cities, O king, not that other church. No, 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 only mine. My church has the best ideas." And the king listened and thought, maybe thinking about it quite a while. Then the king asked the third minister how he thought the cities throughout the kingdom should look. And I think, there he is. That's the third minister. The third minister was a Unitarian minister, just like I am a Unitarian minister, named Francis David. That's our English way of saying it. They were in Romanian, but I don't speak Romanian very well. And Francis David told the king that he thought all of the cities should look like this. "Your Majesty, your city should look as if you love your people and would have peace. All the churches have good ideas, and the only way to decide which is best is to be able to visit them all and meet their people. If you love all your people, you will let them all have a church they want. If you want peace, you won't pick only one and make the others angry." Francis David became very famous for a phrase, some words that we still use today. And those words are, "We need not think alike to love alike." Let me say that again. We need not think alike to love alike. It takes constant practice to do that. The king liked what the third minister said, and he declared that not only would his cities look like this, but this church, the king's church, would be the Unitarian church. He liked Francis David's Unitarian ideas, and he was our first and only, as far as we know, Unitarian king. Didn't stay that for long. The king died. Francis David was turned against by the other churches who were not interested in religious freedom at that point. and they ended up putting him in jail. And he later died in jail, and actually his tomb, you can still visit it in a part of Romania there. And, but he would rather have gone to jail than to have only one church. And Francis David died saying, we do not think alike, to love alike. And that's what I wanted to share with you, in a piece of our history as a denomination that goes back 4.5 centuries, which is a long time. And I think now the children go to their classes. And if you form a center aisle, if you form a bridge for the children to go out, that's the way as you go. Just go ahead.
East Rose is a welcoming community in which we come together intentionally to accomplish and share that which gives meaning to our values. Here at East Rose, we share half of our offering with a nonprofit organization. This quarter, it is Outgrowing Hunger, which builds and operates community farms and gardens for refugees, immigrants, and people who care about affordable access to real food in Portland and Gresham. First-time visitors, you are our guests. Please let the basket pass. Your presence here today is your gift to us. If you have any announcements, please put them in the basket for me to read later. If you're attending online, you may donate by visiting our website and clicking the donate button, or you can scan the code on the screen. Let us now share what gifts we are able for the support of the fellowship. Okay, for this song, you may remain seated for singing hymn number 374, Sings What We Choose. You'll find it in the gray-black hymnal. I call it black because that's what it looks like to me. I don't understand how people see gray here, but anyway. And the words will also be on the screens. I want to tell you that the melody is 371 that we're singing. So if you want to follow along with that while you sing the word 374, that will be great.
And I'm going to play it one time through before we sing.
What we are and what we love.
I said I would help with that hymn. There's been a nostalgia kick going on as we get white hair. Sometimes this happens. And I grew up singing For the Beauty of the Earth from 1949 on. And then this was the doxology that we would use almost every Sunday in my church, which is still just brings back lots of Unitarian church in Wilmington, Delaware, which brings back nice memories. There are two, I have to see what's going on over my head. We need a monitor back there. There are two readings today on the topic of respect and of love. The first is from a talk at our annual Unitarian Universalist General Assembly back in 1986 by the Unitarian author Kurt Vonnegut. And the second is a portion of a song by the late artist Tina Turner. The words are up there, but I'll read them, and it might be easier just to listen to me, or you can read if you wish. So I heard Kurt Vonnegut deliver these words, and they've affected me ever since. I myself seem to be coming across really important stuff very late in life. I'm 63, but it was only 2 months ago that I found a quotation from the works of Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche, a contemporary of Mark Twain, which explains and justifies the spiritual condition of myself, my Indiana ancestors, and my children, and of Mark Twain as well, I think. Nietzsche said, in effect, and in German, of course, that only a person of great faith could afford to be a skeptic. He was honoring the crowd. So what we have here in Rochester, New York tonight is a congregation of people who have faith. You have it in an era when so many Americans find the human condition meaningless, that they are surrendering their will and their common sense to quacks and racketeers and charismatic lunatics. Bad preachers will give them faith for money or in exchange for what little political power the frightened souls without faith may have in this pluralistic democracy. Vonnegut was not one to pull his words, to hesitate. The Christian preachers exhort their listeners to love one another and to love their neighbors and so on. Love is simply too strong a word to be of much use in ordinary day-to-day relationships. Love is for Romeo and Juliet. I'm to love my neighbor? How can I do that when I'm not even speaking to my wife and kids today? My wife said to me the other day, after a knockdown, drag-out fight about interior decoration, I don't love you anymore. And I said to her, so what else is new? She really didn't love me then, which is perfectly normal. She will love me some other time, I hope, I think. It's possible. If she had wanted to terminate the marriage to carry it past the point of no return, she would have had to say, I don't respect you anymore. Now that would be terminal. One of the many unnecessary American catastrophes going on right now, along with the religious revival in plutonium, is all the people who are getting divorced because they don't love each other anymore. That is like trading in a car when the ashtrays are full. This was a while ago. When you don't respect your mate anymore, that's when the transmission is shot and there's a crack in the engine block. I like to think that Jesus said in Aramaic, "Ye shall respect one another." That would be a sign to me that he really wanted to help us here on earth, not just in the afterlife. Then again, he had no way of knowing what ludicrously high standards Hollywood was going to set up for love. How many people resemble Paul Newman or Meryl Streep? Look at the spectrum of emotions we think of automatically when we hear the word love. If you can't love your neighbor, then you can at least like him. If you can't like him, you can at least not give a damn about him. If you can't ignore him, then you have to hate him, right? You've exhausted all the other possibilities. That's a quick trip to hate, isn't it? And it all starts with love. I just realized I read you more than I put on the screen, and I apologize for that, but I hope you enjoyed it. The other reading from Tina Turner, I think, will speak for itself, sing for itself.
About my own protection, it scares me to feel this way. Oh, what's love got to do? It's got to do it. What's love but a second-hand emotion? What's love
I will come back to those themes. That's pretty good stuff for an 83-year-old woman who was only 69 when the video was made, and she died this past May 24th. And that refrain, what's love got to do with it? What's love but a second-hand emotion? And I'll return to those themes in a few minutes. I invite you to join now in the spirit of silent, followed by spoken meditation. Into the silence and to settle into our breathing and to settle into the calmness inside and outside, be it large or small. And to know that each one of us is a seeker, looking for meaning and purpose, looking for serenity and peace, looking for a sense of direction and a capacity to deal with disappointments, looking for all the qualities, in fact, that define us as human, a quality we share with the 8 billion of us on this planet. May that common quest and that common desire be in our hearts and minds today. Amen. May the good energy of this quiet time resonate throughout this day. I've never forgotten going to a Baptist church down the street in Nashville, Tennessee, on when I had a Sunday off from my regular church. And the minister was standing in the pulpit, and he was going along preaching. It was a perfectly fine sermon. It wasn't my religious tradition. I just wanted to see how a really gigantic church down the street was doing things. And then all of a sudden he looked up at the balcony. Well, I knew on the balcony there was a camera, and this was 30-some years ago, so there was a big camera with a red light. Now they're really tiny cameras and you don't see any lights. But anyway, big camera, big red light. And he said goodbye to the TV audience that the church had been broadcasting to. And the camera light went off. And then an entirely different man was standing in the pulpit. The same guy, same voice, but he was a totally different person. And it just helped me to appreciate what a structure the streaming puts around us, which is fine. I'm glad we get to do it. I use it myself every day. And at the same time, it has its own conditions and sort of constraints, and it's been fascinating. Not the least of which was in my rush to get out of the house this morning. In fact, I left my phone. I managed to bring only 2 of my 3 pages of sermon material, but I found the 3rd page on my phone, so maybe we'll see if I can do it. My topic today is respecting love, what love is and what love is not, and loving respect, the value and importance of an essential spiritual value. The word respect itself means to look back or to again look, to see all of a person, of a place, or a situation. In other words, to take a second look, to take an overview look. It can mean a number of words. Re meaning again, and spectere meaning to see. And the Vonnegut quote, when Kurt Vonnegut delivered those lines, well, first of all, I'm grateful I was sitting there. And secondly, I've never forgotten my internal emotional reaction when he talked about the fight with his wife. I understood that. And he made that contrast that you heard in the reading. The other preachers exhort their listeners to love one another and love their neighbors and so on. Love is simply too strong a word to be of much use in ordinary day-to-day relationships. And then, of course, the example that Vonnegut used is when, over an interior decoration decision, I don't know, I guess even at his age of, was he 63, he said, that he hadn't figured out his wife is always right. I mean, what a waste of time he had spent. But nonetheless, that's what it was. And she said, well, I don't love you anymore. He said, what else is new? And then this is what, that set us up, set me up. I assume others reacted the same way. If she had wanted to terminate the marriage to carry it past the point of no return, she would have had to say, I don't respect you anymore. Now that would be terminal. And then that transition he gives from saying we love people to what actually happens when, if we can't get around to loving them, well, we'll tolerate them. If we can't tolerate them, we'll hate them. If we can't hate them, then we've exhausted other possibilities. He says it's a quick trip from love. And the Tina Turner song has a lot of that same sensibility in it. I know it's about romance, of course, and what a voice, and as John said yesterday, what a hairdo. But she was singing about the fragility of love, which she even calls a secondhand emotion. Now, she didn't write the song, she was singing it. Nonetheless, I think she had a certain passion with it and understood what she was talking about, and the video certainly brings some of that across. The recent COVID pandemic, I'll go back on the word recent in just a second, helped us renew, I believe, respect for workers in various fields, for the crafts that are produced and the goods that are manufactured, for the manufacturers of those crafts and goods, the supply chain issues that have affected us all. And then there's, of course, this current wonderfully culturally appropriate expression of respect. And of course, I mean Barbie, the movie. Now, I have to confess, I have not yet seen it. I have quotes from it. I have talked about, I certainly intend to go see it, but it's about respect for women and a transition. And in our household, we've had well over 1,000 Barbies come through just in the last 20 years, because we had a member of this church who was building a Barbie and Ken cathedral, and my wife is his chief procurement officer. And this is before Goodwill realized that someone was buying all the Barbies as rapidly as they became available. And so she really had literally over 1,000 Barbie and Ken dolls come through our house. And we still have quite a few around the house. But one of our favorites is a shrine that Joe gave us, which was based on the same materials that he would be making the cathedral out of, with one of the Spice Girls Barbie doll in the center singing. And it's just a reminder of the complexity and diversity that Barbie has represented over the years, even though certainly one of the reviewers for the movie said, if you hate Barbie, you'll love this movie. If you love Barbie, you'll love this movie. And the people who've been to it, even the skeptics, in my experience, agree that that was accurate. But it's all about respect and increasing awareness of respect, not only in the movie itself, but on the transition that women have had in the time we've had Barbie in all of her various incarnations. I think there's well over 50. Maybe I'm making up the number because I don't remember it, but it's a very high number of ways in which Barbie has appeared on the store shelves. Sure, it was to bring Mattel more income, that's for sure. Nonetheless, it always represented what the people who were buying the Barbie dolls wanted. And then we have other places where respect is far more tenuous. I was listening to a podcast or something on the radio, I guess it was, about the dating apps on our smartphones and how we have transitioned from courtship and getting to know someone, although that may come along, to this selection process of swiping left or swiping right, depending on whether you want to, based on the image and the stuff you've just seen, whether you want to pursue that. And it's more on the focus of, does it stir me like love would stir me versus respect, although they can both be operating in there. But it's a real challenge on that smartphone dating app environment to to get a sense for a real person. And those of us who use Zoom, I use Zoom literally every day in some capacity or another, have the same thing. It can be very real and very artificial in the same encounter. And part of it is we don't have the wholeness of the person to respect, to see again, as I said, and to look back on maybe common relationships and common history. The most common complaint in any relationship, of course, is in our community or at home, is a lack of respect. And this can be the result of simply growing older, or perhaps some personal change in capacity, such as living with the limits imposed by cancer. In my case, I've had liver cancer for 4.25 years now. And overall, it's being controlled. That's what the oncologist promised me when we started this process. And yet, at the same time, it's cancer. It's a very real, very serious disease. And one of the side effects is it makes me look pregnant all the time. So it's enhanced my capacity to empathize with Barbie, I guess. And then we visited a relative yesterday who went for a casual doctor visit on Thursday. And when they said, well, your coronary artery is 95% blocked, and guess what? You're going to the hospital now. And he said, well, shall I drive myself? They said, no, the ambulance is on its way. And tomorrow, presumably, he will have a stent put in and hopefully bypass in a stent way this procedure. If not, they'll do a literal bypass and see what happens. But all of these changes that happen as we get older and capacity changes are part of growing our capacity for respect. And if we hold on to an image of someone the way they ought to be, or we wish they were back there again, it's more frail and fragile. It's that love situation that may or may not, as Vonnegut said, so what else is new? And instead, the respect is to accept who we actually are and the limits that go within it. I personally run into these limits frequently because I'll be doing things feeling pretty sense of purpose, and then I wear out. And that could anywhere be a few minutes to a few hours because I don't always know ahead. And that was mentioned even during the Joys and Concerns today. Accepting the reality of who we are is part of respect. Husbands and wives, for many years, of course, in my counseling practice, saw mostly couples. And sort of being distracted by the emotions. It helped me a lot to learn, by the way, quite a few years ago now in a wonderful book, that an emotion lasts 90 seconds. The reason that helped me is I only could ride on roller coasters as an adult when one day I timed how long it took from the train to the little cars to leave the station to come back to the station. And it was 60 seconds. And I thought I can do anything for 60 seconds, including hanging upside down and spinning. And I enjoyed roller coasters after that. Well, it's the same with emotions. It's 90 seconds, okay, 50% longer, I understand that. But then the emotion itself goes away. That's a clinical thing, according to this brain scientist anyway. And what we're left with is that recurrence of feelings that are stimulated not by whatever happened, but by the resentment we formed while it was happening or after it happened. And husbands and wives all end up in that, I shouldn't say all, frequently end up in that situation. When do I get to do what I want to do? When can I be the person I want to be? And it's a common sort of battle in couple relationships. And this battling is hard on kids. I remember if my parents would be fighting, how scared I was. In terms of their being together, that wasn't a threat. I didn't know that, of course. But it was scary in terms of the energy and the things that were said or expressions on their faces. By the way, just as a footnote, I was talking to my father after I'd gone off to college, and he and my mom seemed to have changed their relationship. I thought maybe it was me getting out of the house that had helped. But that was a joke. So much for jokes. But But it turned out, he said, no, you know what we discovered? Every time we drank gin, we fought. So they stopped drinking gin and switched to wine, and they didn't fight anymore. They also did go to some workshops that probably helped too. A few weeks ago, about a month and a half ago now or so, Terry Barrett, a former member of this congregation, Reverend Terry Barrett, spoke of the different depths of love and what a surprise it was to have her Down syndrome child, Nicholas. And yet what a powerful motivation and transformation agent Nicholas has been in her life. When she respected the reality of who he actually was and what his capacities are, and many of us who've been here a while know Nicholas, and that respect in this case is love in action. And that she talked about that, I thought, very admirably. In our Unitarian Universalist history, we have our roots, I believe, in respect. That's why I wanted to tell the story of King John Sigismund and Francis David. We need not think alike to love alike. And the respect is kind of inherent in the 7 principles that are in the front of our, whatever color it is, black or gray, hymn book. The principles that talk about the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That's respect. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. That's respect. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. That's respect. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. That's respect. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. That's respect. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. A theistically minded colleague of mine one of the General Assemblies where this was being adopted said, the interdependent web, the entity formerly known as God. So, but all of these include the verbs and concepts of respect that have grown out of our Unitarian Universalist tradition. And really one reason we merged in the early 1960s, Unitarians and Universalists, was to take those common values, most of which are accomplished expressed here, and share them not only with one another, but share them with the broader community. We're proposing to change our focus on these values in terms of how we promote it. And there is a image, there it is, that is being proposed as our new image to kind of substitute for the 7 principles, although they are there in word form, much longer word form, I might add, in the proposed changes. But in these, you'll notice that love is put at the center. And this came out of a committee that worked for some time on this. And they feel that all of these other qualities, justice, interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, and generosity, feed into love. And while respect might be implicit in these, it's not explicit. But even more importantly, I feel that the focus on love, that second-hand emotion, moves us away from the respect that is at the core of our faith, I believe, and has been for centuries. And I hope that over the conversations, there's another sort of vote on this next year. It was dealt with this General Assembly in June, and will be dealt again next year, that there is an opportunity to practice that. But more importantly, what I hope is that we understand and remember that these things are really a part of who we are. Now, I think I said that let's return to respect and love, John. I left the 3rd page of my sermon home. It wasn't my brightest thing to ever do. And so I'm going to read from my phone a little, at least read my notes from my phone. One of the things that's really puzzled me as a minister is the transformation from being Reverend so-and-so, Reverend Maynard in my case, to Reverend David. And it's an interesting transformation, and it reminds me every time I hear it. So Reverend Robin Zucker, whichever she's going to be here, I don't know. She starts next week, you'll find out. but that transformation to sort of a affection and closeness relationship, which is good, and yet it doesn't necessarily enhance the respect. And I can tell you the background of that for me has nothing to do with parish ministry itself at all. It's when my very dear friend and colleague, John Burens, became president of the UUA after running for office for 2 or 3 years, I think at least 2, because I was helping him during those. And then his first column in our UU World, the essay, the magazine we put out, he said, "Oh, any one of you could have been president." Well, that's a nice sentiment, John, but I do know you just spent 24 months of your life doing nothing but focused on that. And you also have a doctorate, and you've published in quite a few books, and you're established as a very successful teacher and preacher. And I was just interested the way he kind of glossed over the things that really demand and deserved respect, in my experience. And that has more to do with my reaction to the names than anything else. There's also a real focus on talking about, I shouldn't say focus, a commonality of using words about white culture, resisting social justice in the context of white supremacy. And it always has bothered me that it seems that skin color is mattering more than character or behavior, which would be the essential core of respect. How does someone actually act? How do they respond to other people? To me, that's got more to do with, we live in a mixed race neighborhood in Portland. I'm glad we do. And we know virtually the whole block. And that's been a real treat over the years. And yet it's the individual character and behavior that gives us our common ties, and not some sense of dominant culture or other culture. And I know lots of people disagree with me. I'm not blind to that. It's just a response I have in thinking about this topic. And over the last 30 years, there's been a rather dramatic shift in our denomination toward focusing on justice in various qualities, with that inherent problem that you're looking at essentially what I was taught as a child not to do, judging people just by their group affiliation and forgetting what they're like as individuals. And even more concerning to me, though, is when I find us as a movement sometimes drifting away from remembering that our past really is what's bringing us to this present. And somehow I just remember an East Rose member here who was a visiting minister, had shared her thoughts. She was a UUA staff member, and on this transformation that's taking place, and this member talked to her afterwards during the coffee hour, and the visiting minister said, "Well, if you don't like what we're doing, you should just go to another church." And I thought, tolerance of diversity and respect for reason and really practicing that love we express for one another seemed to go out the window in that one conversation. I wouldn't say that was necessarily something you can generalize, because there was obviously, after the sermon, there's all sorts of emotions going on. So I would like to suggest today in closing that love is a subset of respect, and a variable one at that. And I propose that we continue, as we have in the past, to help one another remember that we need not think alike to love alike. And that's respect in action 450 years ago that can still guide us today. As Kurt Vonnegut said those 37 years ago, I like to think that Jesus said in Aramaic, "You shall respect one another." Even as love brings us pleasure, may we not enshrine this sometimes fickle emotion. Let us truly see, acknowledge, and stay present to one another as the embodiment of our faith in freedom of belief, tolerance of diversity, and the use of our human capacity to reason. Blessed be, and amen. I think if there's time, we'll do discussion, but we may not have time. So I don't want to run past a quarter of. That's the only important thing. Because I try to be a decent guest.
So like, is it like 5? Well, actually, you've got announcements and things to do too, don't you?
Yes.
So probably you need 10 minutes. So you got a few minutes up. That's my calls too. Maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
If there's something I've said that triggered you positively or negatively, you're welcome to blurt it out. Or you can ask a question and I'll try to respond to it. Whichever. I like it. I like it. Hi, Carol.
I just, where I live, I ran into that, you can move if you don't like it attitude. And that's what one of the people that is a minor administrator said to me, because I was breaking that there weren't enough handicap doors. And she said, this is a handicap building, if you don't like it, you can put. I go,
I've run into that and I've seen it in practice, and I know what you're talking about, and it's extremely scary and disruptive simultaneously. At the same time, it's not necessarily an institution that says this is the core of who we are, to help people be together from a diversity of opinions and freedom of belief and tolerance of diversity. And I think we're offering hopefully a different umbrella in that as a religious congregation. But I certainly understand the importance of what you heard, and I hope the person was just having a bad day.
she's like that.
Did someone?
Selena has.
Yes, Selena.
The Vonnegut quote just made me think of a book that I read that was a relationship expert, and who essentially said that he could tell within a very short period of time if couples were in trouble, because if, as they were expressing themselves, if anyone expressed contempt, or that basically contempt was the death knell for a relationship. He's like, that is something that you just cannot come back from, which is pretty much the flip side of respect, that you can be angry is fine, disappointed is fine, but contempt, there's just no recovering from that.
The Gottmans in Seattle have studied healthy marriages for 40 years now, and that's one of their points. They call it the 4 horsemen. They have contempt, and the other 3 that are not in my head at this moment, so I won't try to quote them. But he would say exactly, he and John and Julie say exactly the same thing. They're the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It's death to relationships. Fortunately, people can reverse. The antidotes to all of those 4 horsemen actually turn out to be quite simple. It's our willingness to use them. That's the challenge. I think we probably better sing. I chose this hymn, well, because I think it's relevant and I like it, but it's not necessarily easy to sing. So I said I would sing it through once, and then we'll sing the verses. And what's the norm? Do we stand or sit? Stand? Okay. Please stand. If you're at home, stand up too. Let me sing it through to help you on this. Let's do the first one.
I forgot I was the one saying something this time. Okay. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the community, or the fire of commitment. These carry our hearts until we are together again. Postlude.
Bless ourselves, those we encounter, and respect today and all the days of our lives. Shalom, salam, and peace. And I think you have announcements. Right. There's one here.
This is the time for announcements. And this says East Rose Group Hike, Wednesday, August 2nd, 8:30 a.m. Meet at East Rose to carpool at, Tualatin Hills Nature Park, 2.6 miles. Minor elevation change. That sounds like my kind of hike. Mostly flat. Contact Larry Adams for additional information. Please RSVP by Tuesday. And I was told I was going to be given an announcement about making sure that everybody comes next Sunday for, yes.
You should all be getting a postcard about this in the mail very soon. But next Sunday, we're welcoming a new minister, Reverend Robin Zucker, and I'm pretty sure she goes by Reverend Robin. But we'll find out. She will be in the pulpit for the next 3 Sundays, and for the next year, 3 Sundays a month. We're going to have potluck. It'll be the first Sunday of the month. Reach out to some folks you know that haven't been here in a while. Give them an opportunity to get to know our new minister, and there will be activities and games for the children as well, so call your neighbors and friends that have the kids. I think we want to make sure we give Reverend Robin a really warm welcome to East Rose. I've met with her twice in the last 10 days, and I'm very full of hope and excitement for what the energy and the ideas that she's going to bring to East Rose at this time in our existence.
Thank you. Can I add something to that? Because Cynthia has said bring flowers.
Oh, thank you, yes.
And some of you, like me, may not be able to bring a whole bouquet full of flowers, but if you can bring a few, because I'll bring a nice big vase and we can stick all our few flowers in there.
Or just lots of little vases is fine too, yeah.
So now we all get to visit. You people out there online get to go to Zoom to join in conversation, and thank you for coming. we people here get to have coffee and conversation right here in the sanctuary.